Good afternoon and welcome to the Carolina Codecast, the official podcast of the Carolina Code Conference. With me today is Gavin Coyle. Say hello, Gavin.
How's it going, Barry?
It's going great. Glad you could be here.
Yeah, no, fun to be with you.
Yep, absolutely. So tell us about yourself. Tell the audience about yourself. What are you up to these days?
Yeah, so really quick history from Chicago. Live now in the South, last 5 years in Atlanta, but work for Enok Collective based out of Greenville. So I work remote for them, but I'm in town all the time, getting to hang out with people like you, going to conferences, networking. Yes, we're based out of Greenville. I work as a product manager and agile coach, and the most recent thing that I'm up to is head of growth now, fancy new term for our brand called EngineerKit. So a piece of what we do at Enok.
Okay. So you've obviously got a lot going on. And so we got a lot to talk about today, I know. So I'm just going to get right into it.
Yeah.
Let's start with your background. How did you get into technology and how did you get into this field in the first place?
Yeah. So probably like a lot of people, career changers, it's a windy road figuring out what you want to do. So I got into tech about 8 years ago. Before that, I was in biology, going into research, and then med school. All of that seemed a bit too much for me. I saw my brother go through med school and residency and fellowship. It's like a 15-year one-way track. So I said, okay, that's good for you, brother. I'm going to do something else.
That's pretty intense, for sure.
Yeah. But he's on the other side now. He's mid-30s, and he has his first job. So good for him. But he's a cardiologist, really successful in Austin, Texas area. So after seeing I didn't want to do that, a couple odd jobs, did community management and creation, leadership training for a local college where I went to school in Central Illinois. Then got into forklifts. So I was working with a bunch of union guys in Illinois.
Interesting.
So forklift dealership. So I was parts and service, assistant management. And I was the young puke that no one wanted to listen to. So I lasted about 2 years there. Great experience, a lot of great guys I got to know, and they really put their arm around me. But I saw that wasn't the field I wanted to be in. So I was applying around, trying to get into something new. I applied to a local in Central Illinois. It was a healthcare sharing organization. And there was a role called a Scrum Master. And I had no idea what that was. I know my dad had played rugby, so I was like, okay, I know what a Scrum is. But why would that be a part of it, like a software team? So I had an interview for a role, and they saw pretty quickly I don't know what I'm talking about. So I went off and read some books, came back. So over 9 months of pleading and reading books and re-interviewing, I finally got in as a Scrum Master apprentice. So this group had a 6-month apprenticeship for a Scrum Master. So I went through that, read 23 books. It was a book a week. It was nuts.
Wow.
I got a part of spinning up 2 teams, thinking about efficiency, process with software development. And I was there for about 2 years. And then the CIO of that company, Rod Roth, he left and started Enok. And we went on a couple lunch dates for a couple months. He was wooing me and courting me, and I eventually followed him over and went into Enok. So I've been at Enok now for about 6 years.
That is quite the journey and the path. And, there really are always a lot of interesting paths that people take to where they end up career wise. But working with forklifts is new. You're the first person I've talked to that's had forklifts as a path on their journey.
It's a big deal.
But yeah, no, it's pretty cool though. I really want to know how to drive a forklift. Did you get officially certified and everything as part of the process?
I always avoided it. Didn't want to get sucked in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I would have just wanted to play on the equipment personally.
For sure.
But all right. So with Enok Collective, I mean, you're, according to LinkedIn, you're a product manager and an agile coach.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about Enok Collective itself. What exactly does Enok do? And I don't know if you can talk about any of the work that you've done with them to this point, but I'd love to hear a little more about it.
Yeah. So when you sit on a stool, it's usually got 3 legs. So the analogy I give is the 3 legs of the stool are 3 things that we do for our clients. So in summary, it's a software development consultancy. So leg 1 of the stool is what we call the innovation studio. So the question we try to answer with our clients is there a place for this idea in the market? So think well-funded founder. Think maybe a tiger team coming around an idea from an enterprise group that wants to put it outside the walls, let it run, pull it back in, corporate innovation. So as a product manager there, I'm thinking alongside the founder, viability of their product in the market, going through things like a design sprint, proof of concept, minimal viable product, just trying to see, is this thing have enough legs to keep investing into it before you get to costly software building. And then software, of course, can be a part of the story when you've met a market need. Leg number 2 is immersion. So that's our way of saying we will go into your space as you are growing your business and as software is a part of what you do. We'll bring our consultants in to immerse, be part of the team, help ship code, but also help teams and processes become better. So we've kind of found our way of being natural mentors to the teams that we serve. So the analogy in my head, again, because of my med school background, a good doctor doesn't want to see you again because you're healthy. So in the same way, we don't want to see our clients again, not in a bad way, but just to make sure that they're independent and they can take care of their own teams and their product and their process without there needing to be vendor lock. So that's immersion. That's kind of the second stool leg. The third leg of the stool is EngineerKit. That's what I get to focus on now full time as a head of growth. So EngineerKit is asking the question as an owner of a business, well, now I want to make sure I own it and I can maintain my own product and scale it as I need to. But how the heck do I grow a team? What do I do about growing software engineering, discipline and talents and standards? So EngineerKit comes in hope to answer that question around finding, growing, and retaining software engineering talent, which is probably something a lot of business owners haven't done. And
so what was the origin of the creation of this EngineerKit process?
Yeah. Solving our own problem. Engineers are flighty. They're hard to find. And if you can find them, they're hard to afford. We need production ready talent to do the work we need right now. And it's just hard to find that. In the consulting world, it's hard to compete too with product run or think Silicon Valley product companies that can afford much higher salaries than what a consultancy can afford. So there's just a lot of competition for what we would do to help our clients. So the pain point we're solving for ourselves is how do we organically create our own talent when it's hard to find it? As a consultancy, it's a different mindset, leading and guiding, being thought leaders. So EngineerKit was our answer for how do we organically grow and keep, our own people.
Okay. It's an interesting approach. I know whenever we had, so y'all sponsored the conference this year, the Carolina Code Conference in August. Yep. Enok has of course sponsored from the very first Carolina Code Conference back in 2018. And so y'all have been involved from the very beginning. But this year you wanted to sponsor as EngineerKit, specifically as its own brand. So, yep. So what was the mindset behind that? And can you talk a little bit about what y'all did at the conference and kind of the benefits that you saw?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I think I'd start with saying we needed someone like you for a while, Barry, thinking about the community and organizing all of the things that are going on. No one could do it all. And I'm really grateful you've taken on the role of community builder and running a conference that brings us all together and really the Southeast, because I think the vision's growing. And that is a lot of work. And I saw all the behind the scenes when I was there. So it is nuts. And I admire what you and your wife did. Sounds like you guys were a dynamic duo. So the reason that we wanted to be a part of it. Oh, sorry. I cut you off.
I like to think so.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the boss. I'm glad your wife was there to help. She seemed more organized.
She is.
She kept it locked down.
Yeah. Have you ever been one of those people that goes, I'm the vision person, and then you kind of wonder what they're doing, and then there's other people around to make sure everything actually happens? I'm the vision person with this, and then she's the one who actually makes sure everything is taken care of. It's not quite to that degree, but yeah, the conference would not have run nearly as smoothly if she wasn't there.
Keeps you grounded. I saw her with her little clipboard, her checklist.
Oh, yeah. She's on top of
stuff. So I think the thing that really drew us, so Enok's mission statement is to launch people, launch products. We launch people internally through EngineerKit, growing our own talent, but launching people in the community is a part of that. So what do we do outside of our four walls? We want to get involved in the local cities that we're part of, especially Greenville, where we're headquartered. So the thought there was, how can we complement what's already going on? And Barry, you already had something going on. So coming alongside what you're doing to bring the community together was really important to us around launching talent, launching people. So that's what made it an easy choice.
And so y'all sponsored the, one of the things that y'all got as part of your sponsorship is you got naming rights to a piece of the event. And so y'all took over lunch.
Yeah.
And so you ended up passing out flyers during lunch and kind of getting to talk to everybody during the event about the mentorship mission. And
Mm-hmm.
so what was the setup for that, and kind of how did that go for you? You ended up having a lot
Yeah.
of good conversations?
Yeah. We like food. That's why we picked the lunch hour. Um, and of course, it's good to break bread and chat. So I feel like there was a lull, and it was a good time to talk about bigger things than ourselves. So we've got our mission, our work, our skill set, but there are people that want to do what we do. And we were there at one point thinking about how do we break into this field. My story was that I have no idea how to break in. I got to read a book to figure out how to even talk the language. So the lunch hour seemed like the right time to talk big picture, altruistic. How's the community doing? How are we growing local talent for the businesses, to hire from locally and thrive with? So that was some of the rationale. Having the booth, I love that you set up the booths there. Was it called the Clemson One building? Was that the venue?
Yeah, it was the Clemson space of the one building on
The
1
One
North Main
building.
Street.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
the building is technically called the Greenville One building.
Okay.
Clemson is kind of the main tenant there, it seems like.
Okay. That's helpful. I can see you like Clemson a little bit from what I'm seeing you wear.
Oh
You went
gosh,
there,
you have
didn't
no
you?
idea. You have no idea what is off camera in this office.
Okay.
I've got like a whole wall over here and over here. It's crazy. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
no, yeah, I am a huge Clemson fan, and
Love it.
I've been a Clemson fan since I was born.
Wow.
Most of my family went to Clemson, and
Okay.
when I was there, I was actually really involved with an organization called Central Spirit, which does just about everything around sports at Clemson outside of actually playing them.
Okay.
And so yeah, I was a face painter, had the full orange overalls and everything. Like I was that
Awesome.
guy. So, but yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. In fact, I know this is probably going to publish. We're recording it on January 12th today, but this is probably going to end up publishing around middle of February.
Okay.
And so we just got the big news that Dabo has turned down Alabama for their head coaching position.
Oh, okay.
We can get that official. So I'm having a really good day right now.
So yeah, that's good news. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm glad you're
But yeah,
keeping.
no, my affinity for Clemson had nothing to do with picking that space. I
Uh-huh.
ended up I got a lot of really good advice, mentors you could say,
Oh,
when it came to setting stuff up, and I basically just talked to a whole lot of people who had gotten things set up and started researching venues and options and whatnot. And one of the main focuses that I had once I set stuff up was that I realized if I was going to be promoting the event, I did not have many pictures or video or anything to really work with from the previous events to promote future events.
yeah.
And so my primary concern was finding somewhere that was going to photograph well and
Yeah.
where we would be able to have a really good presentation set up with a video screen and everything that we would be able to properly record so that we would actually have material to continue promoting the conference with in the future, and the speakers and the sponsors as well. And as soon as I saw that space and just how the light comes in from every direction and had, and the quality of the projector setup that was in there, it's like, this is perfect. And so I stopped looking at other places and just went, this is
Right.
literally exactly what I was looking for. We're done.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it
I
was
was
good
gonna
stuff.
I was gonna add in there really quick. That was one of the reasons that made it kind of like icing on the cake or such an easy thought of sponsoring is when you're talking about, hey, this will be content that will run for the year. These pictures, these videos will be part of our way to market in the future. So that we were really lucky to be part of the early part, to be in that early sponsorship slot. So thanks for making a way for us.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, we would never have even gotten there if it hadn't been for the work of Joel getting it going in the first place. And Robert Roscom helped him with it quite a bit as well. And then the early sponsors like y'all who kind of had the initial vision to make it work. I got to speak at the first two events and I loved it. I had a great time, and everybody kept asking, so when's the next one going to happen? When's the next one going to happen? And then COVID stopped it, and but people kept asking. There was definitely a hunger for it, and that was all from all of the early, the people who were involved really early, much before I took it over. So I got to pick up with some momentum and some anticipation. And so I've enjoyed that piece of it, but I don't want to get too much credit for it because there was definitely already a well-established brand long before I got here, and that helped. But now we're just documenting it better.
Right on. Yep.
But so let me get back to you and EngineerKit a little bit. So I want to talk a little bit more about you because I didn't do a good job of covering this earlier on. You went into biology and we're looking at med school.
Yeah.
And that, I imagine, is not something that comes without a lot of forethought and preparation and decision making. I imagine would I be right in saying that that was something that you were thinking about from high school?
Yes. Yeah, I had an audacious is probably not the right word. I had an ambitious goal of wanting to cure certain diseases when I was like in junior high and high school. So I was like, man, I got to go into research.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was ingrained early on because of an influential freshman year biology teacher. He loved bio. I saw that passion. I was like, man, I want this. And then that led to thinking about disease and how to cure and the research front.
So, going from that and then deciding to pivot after you've gone that far through everything. I know you mentioned the long path ahead from med school and everything with various specializations and stuff. Like I know two friends of mine from high school ended up going to Wake Forest, and they ended up going into med school. One of them went into research and one of them went into practicing. Yep. And they talked about, they both have told me about the long journeys that they had from this stuff. I think one of them had 6 years just on a specializations track because he was looking at, I think if you had decided to do gastroenterology or something like that.
Okay.
It's a long track. But, when you've gone through that, you're kind of on the doorstep of med school. What drives you to really reevaluate and say, is this what I want?
Yeah, so back then, I think some of the main thoughts were it felt like a one-way decision, and I just wasn't ready for a commitment. I'm contrasting myself to my brother because he was the one I watched go through the process. He's very determined. He's got a spreadsheet about every choice he makes in his life. He was pretty thorough on knowing that, hey, this is a good track. Here are the risks and the trade-offs, but I'm going for it.
My dad's also a doctor, and he's exactly like that.
Yep, that's what gravitates. Yeah. He started engineering, so he had that engineer mindset, then went into medicine. So I saw his determination. He had the makeup for it, and he's successful where he is. For me, I was scared about the one-way track. There was still a lot I needed to learn about myself. I think maybe a firm way to say it is I had a lot of growing up to do before I was going to make that kind of decision. And a part of that growing up, right.
Have you grown up yet?
I felt getting there. So it was kind of, for me, there's a trade-off. So am I ready for this one-way street or one-way door? I think that's a Jeff Bezos statement. Is this a one-way or a two-way door? For me, that was a one-way door.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So I wasn't ready for that. I think a part of me growing up, actually, one of the first jobs I took as a community builder at a school. So I went to Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. So I did community building, did some fundraising around that, did some leadership training for some of the fraternities, and I overworked. But the beautiful thing is I overworked in a safe place. I wasn't deep in my career. I was still early on. I was working 80 or 90 hours on the campus, unsustainable, unrealistic. So I burned out. And that was a big part of what grew me up, was just seeing that, hey, Gavin, you don't have limitless energy. You need to pull back and create boundaries. So that is a godsend thinking about I burned out at the right time early on in a safe place where now I can think about boundaries, creating environments where there are safe places for people to grow so that other people don't burn out like I did. I've been on the bad side and I want to help others avoid that kind of situation. So my way of saying I had to grow up early.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong about that at all. And it's so I'm also kind of in this space a little bit. I'm certified in Scaled Agile framework. I do consulting, teach classes and stuff like that. And a lot of the
Nice.
fractional consulting stuff that I do is to help people kind of get the balance and the systems so that you can reach the maximum sustainable pace within your organization where you're getting all the barriers that are needed in place so people can work efficiently without burning out. That's what the whole sustainable pace thing means. And so like I'm very against Scrum terminology, specifically because by definition, a sprint is not a sustainable pace. And it bothers me when you're trying to convey that message. Because I've been around so many software developers who will just literally just try to do everything that is asked of them. And they'll end up working long hours. They'll think it's completely reasonable to have all hands 2:00 in the morning deployments once every week or so. And it doesn't have to be like that. And you've got to have a big piece of it is, of course, getting the product side of the house to prioritize effectively, to really figure out exactly what it is, to doing capacity planning to find out what can we actually do with the time that we have, and kind of setting up those guardrails around everything else so that you can be heads down and focused on delivering the things that are important. But the old story of anybody coming to you and saying, and with a list of things to do, and you turn around and ask, what's top priority? Everything's top priority.
Right.
Well, I'm starting this then. And then they say, no. I'm starting this. No. I'm starting this. Okay. That's top priority then. Thank you.
Yeah. Right.
So just getting through those is kind of a big deal. But I'm protective of people specifically because I got my burnout phase as well back in right before my daughter was born. About 3 months before my daughter was born. And so it was around October, November 2010. I guess it was October 2010 as Brightball was shutting down. And I ended up in the hospital. Okay. I went like a month and a half on as little sleep as I possibly could, just living on caffeine. And my chest ended up freezing up. I ended up having to go get hooked up and get various EKG scans and everything to see what was going on. And I was about 30 at the time. I was a little over 30 years old at the time. And they're sitting there telling me, well, you're going to be fine. You just have to change whatever it is that you're doing. And at that point, I was taking so much pride in being a workaholic and being willing to put in all-nighters and do all this stuff, which, don't get me wrong, it was a great learning experience. I learned a ton of great information. I got a lot of experience from it, but I did not have boundaries.
Right.
And you see other people do that, and you see kind of some of the desire that creates it. And the tenacity is good and it's beneficial, but you got to protect the people that are willing to work that hard for you too. And you got to make sure, there are times now when I'll tell people, you might have to make sure that person takes a vacation. They're working too hard. You need to tell them, no, you're done. You're taking a break. Right. If you see somebody put in overtime or put in a lot of time on a 2-week iteration or something like that, go, nope, you're taking a day off next week, and just really protect them that way.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a big part of what a mentor who has gone through that rigor before can produce. Create a safe environment where they have failed, they have burned out, they know what led to that. They know the guardrails to put up for themselves and their team. If we could, as workers who do care about our work, care about the mission of the company or our team, if we could just put a Post-it note on our forehead and show the level of our energy, or when are we out of energy by if we don't take a vacation, it'd make it a lot easier for us in leadership to see when to push in. But we're not good at saying when we need help or when we need to slow down, because that is a hit on our pride, that there are limitations that we have to accept. But then on the other side, it takes people that have burned out to see those signs and to push in and say, hey, I'm not going to wait for you to say something. I know what that looks like. I've been there. Slow down or take a break, like you're saying. So it takes leadership also stepping in, like you're painting a picture of.
Absolutely. And so, as we're getting into mentorship, and we talked about a lot of various challenges that you see and the things that mentors can watch out for to help prepare people to have a better balance in their life and a more effective workplace. What types of challenges do you see mentorship being able to address within an organization?
Yeah, right on. So I think some of the challenges can be broken up by, I would call them different personas. So in an organization, there's got to be some kind of leader or founder or mid-management that thinks about execution of that leader's intent. And then there are what I would call the mentors, or what should be mentors, the people that are key contributors. They're the ones that are probably keeping things afloat. They've solved a lot of problems. There's a reason they've been promoted, to lead dev, senior engineer. And then you've got the learners. So my archetype or persona for people that are career changers getting in, ramping up, need some guidance to onboard or to level up their skills to be an independent practitioner. So starting with actually those coming into a business, challenges I see that can be addressed with mentorship, challenges that a learner faces is they're probably, if breaking into tech is their entry point, they're probably one of 1,400 applying for fewer and fewer entry jobs. And it's kind of the blind leading the blind. If they're grouping up and trying to figure out how do we break in, it is better than being alone, but they still don't know. They don't know what skills are needed to be an independent practitioner, and they probably don't know the jargon, just like how I didn't know it. When you don't see a clear line of sight and you hear silence, or if you hear something, it's probably rejection, you lose hope really quick. So people trying to break in, or even if they are in, there's probably not great guidance I've seen in many teams to onboard. They're almost left to self-onboard or self-actuate. It's a process to who they need to be in the team, to what skills are expected of them, what are the processes that are right for this team. So the learner has a long way to go, unless a mentor who has crossed that bridge before steps in and says, I know those skills, I can help you learn them. You have those skills, well, here's the context and how we use them in our team. So it accelerates their potential, accelerates their onboarding. And if you've got a pack of mentors, or I call it a mentorship network, they can help people ramp up and transition between engagements or teams really quickly. Because again, these are the context bearers. They're the ones that have crossed that chasm before, and they can lend a hand and help people snap in and connect those dots on how to be into that team as an independent contributor, and then how to be interdependent. We can work together and collaborate and solve tough problems. So let me stop there. That's the challenges I've seen with what learners face. But I want to see if you had any things to poke at or stories you've heard around that too.
Yeah, I mean, so when you're trying to utilize effective mentorship within an organization, I mean, you've got to identify people, you've got to grow them, you've got to make sure that they are prepared to kind of know what is expected of them and their role as a mentor as well. Are there other disciplines that a leader could try to use in place of mentorship, or how would those compare?
Yeah, that's great. So some of the hats I've worn and I've seen others wear. So hat number one probably is mentor. So a mentor insinuates that you've got some experience or skill or wisdom in your discipline, and you probably are the one to be the example of it. So I will show you, we'll do it together. I'll tell you how, I'll tell you the principles. I'll show you the right happy path. We'll do it together, help you keep going, help you teach others. Simple steps of mentorship. I also see mentors putting on a leadership hat. So to summarize that in my head, it's here is the hill that we are taking. Come follow me, come be with me. We're going to take this hill together, so they can paint vision, a better future, who they're serving and why. They may do some diplomacy. So I'm going to meet with a bunch of individuals to see how everyone's doing, then bring everyone together and have a shared message. Everyone's coming into that meeting knowing what to expect, how to snap into the conversation. Leaders provide service, so they are supporting, and they're also probably leading the charge. Sometimes we wear a manager hat, so that is more of vision's been set, strategy's probably been agreed to. So the manager is there for structure and accountability. They're execution or action oriented. They help orchestrate, put key people in the right roles. There may be time for delegation. Managers may also be disciplinarians, depending on the structure. So I've said mentor is probably what you start as. You may wear a leader hat, a manager hat. If I've got a favorite one, I think what gets the most out of people is a coaching hat. So a coach, a professional coach, it's kind of the Wild West today in the States. Everyone's a coach on LinkedIn. But if you look at the International Coaching Federation, they're the international, basically gold standard on saying what is coaching. And there are countries that adhere to that, and licensure to be a coach is referred to on what they say a coach is. We're not there yet in the States. But if you look at what they say a coach is, it's someone that shows up, listens, asks questions. It's a partnership and a co-discovery process for the coachee. They're at the helm of the tandem bike. They're up front holding the bars, and the coach is sitting on the back providing momentum. So they listen, they ask questions, they help with action and discovery and accountability. But the beautiful part is the coachee, the one being mentored, really is the one holding themselves accountable. They create their own path. They create the next step. They come back and they say, hey, this is what I will tell you. So it totally flips it and takes the burden off the mentor when they lead as a coach and say, well, what do you think you will do? When we come back together, at our planning meeting, what do you hope to show me? So it puts the burden of creativity, decision-making on the coachee or the mentee. So coaching is, I think, the secret sauce if you had to wear a hat as a mentor.
Yeah, I like that. And I definitely like that approach too, just as, half of the job of a consultant in an organization is to sort of act as a coach for everybody that's there. You're not really calling the shots, but you're trying to make sure that everybody understands what's involved. You're there to listen and try to provide feedback and provide some direction, but you've still got to get everybody to buy in. Just as if you're leading a team or you're leading an organization, it works a lot better if you're not just handing out tasks and saying, you do this, you do this, you do this.
Yeah.
It works a lot better if you say, this is the mission and we're all going this direction. And
Yep.
other people buy in and say, yes, I want in on that.
Yep. Right.
But so, what are you seeing good results with this approach?
Yeah. So our method to get into this is EngineerKit. We take, again, a launch people approach. We can do that inside of four walls in an organization or in an ecosystem, where a city or a region is concerned. It's called workforce development, ecosystem building. So when you launch people inside of an organization, we'll start with us as we did, and then we've been helping, I believe we're up to 43 companies that have put some type of leader or senior engineer through our mentor training. But if you have disciplines or skills that are needed to do the job, who has those disciplines in your organization and who has a temperament to then care about and foster growth in others? Equip them as your mentors. They are the example, and then put them on teams and then in the life of those who are growing in that discipline to help them unlock their potential. Then again, if you lead as a coach, you are creating custom pathways for growth. You're not telling or delegating like a mentor would. Though that may have worked for the mentor to learn that, people learn different ways. They connect dots differently. So a coach creates a safe environment where they can creatively think and own their own growth and create their own next step that they'll own instead of being told something by a mentor that they probably won't own because it wasn't their idea. So the results that we've seen, there's an organization that's got a director who's got 40 direct reports. One of the pain points he has is I can't scale what I do in creating an environment of growth for these people. So he's creating a mentorship network. He now has 7 lead engineers trained in our mentorship approach, a coaching approach to mentorship. And now they're all getting paired up with other engineers. And they actually don't have anyone that has less than like 4 years experience. So this isn't just mentorship for early career. They are mentoring and creating a standard for mid-level and seniors to thrive in. So it's not just for the early career learner or career transitioner. A mentorship culture is meant for whoever wants to grow or to be in a culture and environment that's sticky and I belong and I can grow in this trade.
Yeah. I know you mentioned that like everybody's a coach, but in the software field, everybody's also a senior developer.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
some level of senior almost out of the gate. You get out of college, your first job, you're like, hey, I've been here a month. I want to be a senior developer.
Yeah. I'm full stack.
And yeah, and exactly. And you got so much to learn. And so I've always appreciated organizations that can clearly define the distinction between senior and junior, or between senior and just, developer and senior developer. The problem is that so many, that from a recruiting standpoint, unless you have that title on there, unless you're a larger organization that can clearly put it on there, people still don't want to hear it. They don't want the distinction. And so, I think my personal favorite was an organization that would specifically define a senior developer as somebody who could also, play in the DevOps side of the field.
Okay.
Versus just, focusing on a programming language. Say you've got that, you're broadening your skill set a little bit to where you can get involved in some other things. And that definition is going to vary between places that you go, but being distinctive about it is good. And so when you say people with 4 years who are seniors, I know there are people who are listening who are going to just chuckle like, "No, you're not a senior. 20 years, you're a senior."
Yeah, right.
But at that point, you might be very good at what you do, but there's still a lot of experience to get, and that goes for everybody. With anything that you're doing, everything comes with time and experience.
Right.
Absolutely. But so, but how do you coach the more senior people that, are you getting feedback? Is there interesting dynamics there? Do you have any people who are younger coaching, more experienced people at all?
Yes. Yeah. I'll say yes to both. So let me give you a couple stories. Um, a developer recently, I think 2 months ago, went through our mentor training, our level 1 mentor training out of 3. He had been through large groups, consultancies like Accenture.
Oh,
So
wow.
he has seen scaled, he has seen smaller, he's seen mid market. And one of his comments after our 2-day training, he'd said, I had no idea how much I could get out of a 5-minute conversation. I used to have to take an hour and a half to show someone what to do. And it ended up being me just doing it for them because I'll default to what I know is just solve the problem and do it. But taking a coach approach to a conversation, he said, I put it totally on them and I could do this in 5 minutes and get back to what I need to do because now they've got a path that they will own and come back to me on. So that was a senior. And he's 25 plus years, so hopefully he's in that category of what most would say a senior is.
Yep.
And then another story, there is a up and coming engineer at one of the organizations we're working with, mid 20s, a lot of drive, a lot of passion, but just doesn't have as much experience to be an independent leader of a team. But going through our mentorship training, he said, man, I'm coming out confident. And he's working with onshore and nearshore, all kind of guys that are older, and he's leading the charge in not a prideful way, enforcing. He's just really listening and he's asking questions. And what he's doing is he's showing humility, and then he also fills in gaps where needed, but he's making people around him better that are older by just saying, hey, what do you think? How would you approach this? Okay, let's chase that down. Okay, let me take this one. So he's just kind of subtly orchestrating by empowering people around him, and they're older than he is. But they see his passion and they're like, yeah, that is a good idea. Okay, I can own that. Or that is a good approach. Here's my next step. So I've seen both of those scenarios.
I like that. I like that a lot. It's definitely a mindset. I think anybody who has any working knowledge of any given system or a strong opinion on anything is going to have a harder time sitting back and going, well, how would you approach this versus just that desire to solve the problem for them.
Yeah.
But it's certainly rewarding whenever you're able to steer in that direction a little bit. And it's always nice. I mean, if you know there's going to be consequences to the ways that people are going to approach something, depending on the time you have available, sometimes you can let people learn from it. Say, I know this isn't going to work, but it's going to take you 2 hours, so just find out for yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to say it, but you can just let them go on their path. But then there's others where you can just potentially just step in if you let them run, and if you see something is going off the rails or is going to go in a clearly bad direction, just kind of jump back in and go, well, hey, what's going to happen if you do this?
Yep.
And it's really tough to frame your conversations that way if you haven't been trained to do it. And so I imagine the training process is probably pretty eye-opening for people.
That's really well said. Another story I can share just on that is one of, again, that group that has 40 individuals that report to one, and he's starting to create a mentorship network around him. Now, he's a DevOps engineer, and he had said, the favorite part of mentoring for me is I get to learn how other people learn, how they critically solve problems. Because he said, when I ask questions, they talk out loud and tell me how they think, and they share approaches I would have never thought of. So he's getting smarter. He's seeing things from new angles by mentoring. I think there's more I could share there, but that was a little story that came to mind.
No, totally good. So, I mean, are there core ingredients that a company needs to have for mentorship to really flourish?
Yeah, that's good. So, some of the challenges, going back to an earlier question, so we talked about challenges a learner faced. Some of the challenges the mentor faces, and just what we were talking about, is I am really good at my job. I can solve problems. I can think quickly. I can do quickly. That's why I'm probably promoted to a lead or a senior. But what that does then, it kind of pigeonholes them into they are the solution. They are, in a sense, the bottleneck. They are all things. The buck stops with them. So they no longer can take vacation. They can't leave their laptop at home. When they do get around a team member that's asking for support, they default to what they know and they just solve it, right? They're not going to help the other learn or find a way to do it. So the challenges that mentors face really gets into, I don't know how to take a break. I'm burning out. I'm looking for other jobs because this is not sustainable. I can't be the single point of failure anymore. I can't deal with that pressure. And they don't want that. They didn't try to create that for themselves, but that's kind of what happens when they keep wanting, going back to the default, but also there's dopamine hits, when we get into solving problems. There is joy in it, and it's hard to pass that off and see others solve it and not say, hey, that's what I would have done, or that was my idea. So it takes humility. So I think some of the raw ingredients, a mentor needs to lead by example, and they need humility. So the thought then is their success is really in the success of their team, no longer what they can do or what they can solve on their own. Yeah. So the thought there on a challenge that a mentor faces is they are, the buck stops with them. So ingredients for them would be they've got to be the example of the skills that they expect their team to know. They've got to also be equipped on how to equip others. So how do I help train or raise up the low barrels or the low staves on a barrel, for example? I think that's what they're called, right? Staves on a barrel.
Is that what those are called?
I think a stave. Let's say a stick.
The rings that go around them, or the wooden pieces?
Yeah, the wooden pieces are called staves, I think, right?
Okay, I'm actually not sure. I feel like I should know that. I'm a fan of whiskey, so I feel like I need to know.
There you go. Yeah, we'll go with it. We'll say stick or stave.
We'll Google it at some point. And just to give you a heads up, we're being joined by my dogs now.
Awesome.
Because we're in the middle of a thunderstorm here right now, and they're freaking out. So if I have to mute or if there's anything going on in the background, that's what it is. I've got a 90-pound retriever trying to hide under my desk right now.
Yeah. Safety with dad. I get it. Good. So back to your question, raw ingredients. A mentor needs to meet their mentee where they are. A coach knows how to do that just by asking questions, meet them where they are. Don't lead a ghost. Mentors need to be an example of the skills that are expected of their team. They need to know how to equip. So how do you pass on skills and knowledge? So through coaching, it takes the burden off of you as a mentor. And then the last raw ingredient I would say for a mentor is how to empower others to learn in their best way, and then see their strengths and just give them leash, if you will. You know enough there, you'll be fine. Go ahead and take care of that and come back to me, if you do have a question. A mentor I've seen is also as good as the mentee when it comes to transitioning knowledge. If the mentee doesn't stay humble and doesn't ask for help, that's a challenge. If the mentee doesn't have grit or drive, it's kind of like they're laying down, throwing a leg up and hope that the mentor would find them and drag them along the ground. You can't do that. It's not what the mentor is there for. Yeah. It's better for you to be up and moving and they can orient you instead of drag you along. So we've got to be humble and stay driven as learners too. We've got to show up with a growth mentality, and we've got to be willing to become independent before we can be interdependent. We've got to be okay on our own in our skill set. The other basic ingredients in the story, so we talked about what a mentor needs. They are limited by what the mentee brings, but then the environment is limited by what the leadership creates. So how supportive is the environment for mentorship to take place? And that's the leaders that set the pace and the culture.
Always goes top down in terms of setting that culture and enabling anything. Like even when I've tried to do, scaled agile transformations, it's always a matter of getting upper management to buy in. Because if they're not bought in from the beginning, you're wasting your time, because you can put all the effort in the world, but you're just going to get undermined the first time anything goes wrong. Right. And there's always going to be challenges, right? Yep. And so, but if you've got an environment where something like this is gonna flourish, and you've got leadership that's going to buy into the idea of training mentors and everything, I think just from my own opinion of this would be that you're going to end up having a very happy, healthy work culture. And I would imagine you'd have a lot less turnover. You're going to have happier teams. You're going to have people who feel like they're supported by the people that are leading them. Yeah. Yeah, that's right on. Yeah, some statistics we've seen about benefits of mentorship. It self-perpetuates. So there's a statistic that 89% of who are mentored go on to mentor others. So the initial investment, though it may take time, it just is almost guaranteed to have a chain reaction. What mentorship brings, especially a coaching mentor, they bring care in a way that maybe hasn't been shown before, that people do matter. Their goals and growth and their skill set does matter. A coach meets them where they are. We've seen reduced retention rates. If I'm saying that right, people don't leave as quickly. Increased retention rates? Yeah, that's the right one. I was saying it the wrong way. Increased retention rates. Yeah, because now people see that, hey, who I am, how I want to grow, it's mattered, it's seen, I'm known, and people are coming alongside to help me grow. So I want to stay where I can grow, or I'm going to quit and go where I can grow. So this creates a sticky culture too. So there's some statistics we've seen too on what the leader can create by creating that supportive environment. Absolutely. So, Gavin, we've talked a lot about what you've done with EngineerKit. We've talked a lot about mentorship and organizational challenges and what goes into it. But do you see, you've got this big background in biology. We're getting ready to go to med school before you complete career pivot into this.
Yep.
Do you see any parallels between that biology world, organisms and organizations?
Yes. I'm going to test out the share screen function and see if we can throw up a quick image here.
You go right ahead. We'll do our best to describe it for our listeners, but this will also be up on YouTube if you want to take a look at the screen share.
Love it. Can you see this okay, Barry?
Yeah, I got it.
So you're probably used to, like, freshman year bio, you looked at ecosystems or a food web. So what are all the organisms, that are a part of a
So
forest,
can you describe
for
this picture a little bit for the audience, just for the people who don't have the visual?
Yeah, great call. So the image I'm showing here is a forest food web. So it's showing all of the different kinds of animals, plants, and fungus that would be a part of an ecosystem. So there's some trees that would show different foxes, squirrels, birds, rabbits, fungus, plants. So just who are all the different players, in the forest. So the question I have for you, Barry, this is I'm going to put you on the spot. If you had to say what organism in a food web, like a forest food web, is most like a mentor, what would it be?
Based on this picture that I'm looking at right here?
That's right. And it cannot be the sun. That's external.
Yeah. Honestly, it's not labeled here, but I would probably say the trees.
Okay. Tell me more.
Well, the trees are going to find out where the ground is healthy. They're going to provide shade. They're going to provide a place for different animals to live throughout it. And as the soil, as it's a fertile area, then the trees are gonna grow and sustain. And so it kind of provides a little bit of a guidepost, and it shelters you from the storms.
Right on. Good. Yeah. So that is a good answer, but it's not the one I was hoping for.
All right. What are you?
So let me scroll down here. So if you're used to Mario, you're probably used to that mushroom, the fly agaric. So the red mushroom cap, if you're used to playing Mario. So here's the punchline. So I'm showing another image here talking about different types of mushrooms, 2 major classes. And then I'll give my rationale for why I think this best aligns. But any analogy breaks down, there are reasons that other parts of the food web make sense, for similarities to a mentor. So 2 types of mushrooms. One is a litter degrader, and then one is a mycorrhizae fungus. So litter degrader, so a leaf falls from a tree. They break that leaf up, put the nutrients back into the soil for everyone else to use so that it's not locked up and it's no longer available. And then a mycorrhizae mushroom. So that means what they do is they transition nutrients in between organisms or in between trees. So a bunch of these mushrooms create something called a mycorrhizal network, which is Latin for fungus root. So what they do is they make sure that whatever's been made there or has been given back to the environment from a degrader, the mycorrhizae fungus then are the ones that are pushing the nutrients to those that need it. A fun example too, there's something called ecological succession. So the 2 trees shown here, one is a birch, a beech, one is a spruce. There's actually been studies shown that these mycorrhizae mushrooms will actually pass nutrients in between species. So ecological succession is when an ecosystem invites new players into the different niches. The more diversity there is, the more healthy the ecosystem is. Another way to say that, if there's been a plot that's been deforested and there's an initiative to plant trees again and reforest, if you only plant one kind of tree, within a few years, it actually becomes a dead ecosystem. So because there's only one type of tree, it's not sustainable. So you need different types of players that do different or take up different roles, different niches, create different habitats for different animals. So diversity is a big deal in an ecosystem. And then also make sure the nutrients are moving and not locked up in the litter, on the ground floor, for example. But I've got some more to share there, but let me pause and see what you're thinking here, Barry.
No, it makes sense to me. I'm learning right now. I'm just kind of absorbed.
Right on. So the analogy I would give, and I can stop sharing here. See if I can find out how to do that. The old stop. That should do it. Okay. So the analogy I draw then is the 2 keywords I use was diversity and then nutrients. So nutrients have to be accessible and moved. So nutrients would kind of like in a product team be a skill or a piece of knowledge. So the mentor is really good at acquiring new nutrients or new knowledge and skill and passing it on to others. And then like ecological succession, they're almost inviting others to do the same. So it's not just them that are the mentors, they're helping others become mentors. So now it's kind of like all the plants are looking to stay healthy, but also increase the growth of all the plants around them. So that's keeping nutrients moving, or skills and knowledge moving. And then the other piece of the example would be diversity. So we need diversity of perspective and a diversity of how we solve problems. And a coaching mentor really creates different ways of thinking, or allowing us to solve a problem from the way that we see it, which may be different than how the mentor originally would have approached it. So allowing for diversity of thought and perspective and who we are as people fills in key niches and gets probably the right way to solve a problem that may have not been first thought of by the mentor. So that's that diversity of thinking is what a coaching mentor can especially bring.
Okay. That is really interesting, Barrel. You've put a lot of thought into that.
It's been fun. I like mushrooms.
Yep. I was watching, my wife and I were watching something on Netflix the other day. It was talking about how great mushrooms were for you.
That's right.
Just in terms of cooking them. And apparently, and in a complete segue to a different topic, apparently the upstate of South Carolina is one of the best mushroom foraging areas in the entire country.
Do they have morels?
I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I just have been told by people who are really into foraging this is supposed to be one of the best areas in the country. Apparently, there's even like one of the big chefs in downtown Greenville. I think the guy who's the chef at Trapdoor.
Oh yeah.
Apparently, if you bring in a bunch of mushrooms, he'll and he knows about it ahead of time. He'll be happy to prepare them and everything for you.
So you're not just some random guy walking in with a bag of mushrooms?
Yeah, that would.
He knows you're coming.
Yeah, he's going to need to know who you are. But I've been told that from people who are more in the know in the foodie scene than I am.
That's funny.
Interesting segue into mushrooms. You never know what's going to happen on the Carolina Codecast.
That's right.
But we're also a big Mario family too, so I definitely appreciate the mushroom analogy there too.
Nice. Yep.
All right, so let's see. There was a couple other things that I definitely wanted to ask you about. I know we're getting kind of close to time here.
Yeah.
Spotted on your LinkedIn that you did that you have a highlight listed as running an engineering guild meeting about programming languages. Would you like to talk about that at all? Because I got curious. As a polyglot conference,
right,
hearing people talking about programming languages, it gets my attention.
Yeah, right on. So what we do, we call it an open engineering guild. So what we've done last year, and we're thinking about new ways to do it this year with our reboot, but last year we had a monthly connect with our engineering guild. So think of our Enok consultants coming and just whoever wants to show up in a remote context to talk shop with us. We'd come forward with a topic, largely based on just some of the core skills that we use as software engineer generalists, or you could say polyglots. So we might do a kata together. If you used to Code Wars, we might talk about a specific topic or how we're using prompt engineering, whatever the case may be. But just a place where people who are trying to break in or are in an established career as an engineer, but are just looking for how are other people doing it over there. It creates a place where people can share notes. So again, just like an ecosystem, we're moving nutrients or skills, in between ourselves. So fostering software engineering growth, that's one of the goals of that.
Okay. So you mentioned a couple of things that I, if you don't mind, I'd like to get you to expand on a little bit. So go ahead and talk about what is prompt engineering. Okay.
So take it with a grain of salt. I'm not an engineer. I've just been around a lot of people talking about it.
I understand that.
Yeah. So a lot of people may leave a comment or butcher and say, he has no idea what he's talking about. From what I've been told, prompt engineering would be the ability of an engineer to use AI to get the results that they're after, or a better result than with poor prompting. So how can I work with an AI bot to make sure that, like Copilot or GitHub's Copilot, how can I get the best result and almost pair program with this bot in a way like I'd pair program with another human? How I'm sharing my thought, my process while they're capturing on the keyboard. So what's the best way to prompt the AI bot to work with me as we're developing together?
And so, and one of the other things that you mentioned was, I think you said a kata, or from Code Wars. I'm not familiar with this at all. So tell me about it a little bit. Yeah.
So kata, I believe that's borrowed from a Japanese. I think it's Japanese or something to do with karate. So it's like muscle memory, like the wax on, wax off. Get used to doing a movement. So what it is let's say you want to get better at JavaScript. There's a website called codewars.com, and they have many, many katas, or think like small coding challenges to solve to get used to and go deeper in learning a specific language. So JavaScript would have many, many katas or problems to solve. And then you get to see the community and how they solve that problem. And you can like vote on each other's most creative or the longest or the shortest solution. So a kata is a way for deep language learning. It's to practice muscle memory, get better at solving problems in that language.
Nice. All right. Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with Code Wars at all, but I have to go check that out. I'll include a link to that in the show notes here.
Nice. Yeah. It's a fun one.
So, all right. And the last thing I wanted to ask you about, you were also affiliated with, in addition to Enok Collective and EngineerKit, you're also affiliated with the Agile Learning Institute.
Yeah.
And so, we've had Christina Roberts on here from a previous episode, who's the chairwoman of the board of the Agile Learning Institute. And we got to learn a lot about it in that episode. And I'll link to that episode in the show notes too. But talk to me about your involvement with the Agile Learning Institute. It definitely, knowing a little bit about what they do myself, and kind of seeing what your background is and the passion for that you've got for EngineerKit and mentorship. It makes complete sense to me, but talk about your involvement with Agile Learning Institute a little bit.
That's awesome. Well, shout out to Christina for being an awesome human. She's been an integral part of that team and that board at Agile Learning Institute, coming alongside Mike Story, who founded the Institute. So based out of North Carolina, their goal is to reach the underreached, underserved, and give them an opportunity to break into a technical position through mentorship. So there's a ton of alignment in their philosophy and how they think as we do with EngineerKit. So skill-based learning coming alongside as a coaching mentor. So I'm there more of like a mentor advisor on the board. So I'll get into the weeds with the mentors that are a part of the Agile Learning Institute, and then help them add on coaching discipline through our training on top of what they do as mentors, and then how to use EngineerKit as a content or a process framework to use as they need with their mentees. And I use the word framework specifically because it's something to snap on, get started with, but tune, because every mentor, every mentee is different. Every environment is different. Every job that you're preparing for is different. So it's a framework to help to get you started, save time, build confidence. So I'm there as a mentor trainer.
Okay, nice. Well, noble goals all around. And so I will also link to the Agile Learning Institute and that previous episode about it in the show notes today.
Love it.
Outside of that is, we're just about at time here. Is there anything else you'd like to close out with?
Yeah, I think main thing, Barry, just again, I loved what you've done for the community. It's been awesome to be coming alongside and complimenting what you do. So thank you for investing into Greenville and making a way for us to share knowledge and be a part of something bigger in the tech scene than just what we do in our four walls. So thank you for all your energy.
Oh, thanks for that. Standing on the shoulders of giants.
That's right.
Greatly appreciate it. All right. And so with that, let me give my weekly shout out to Herd Media. Speaking of giants, you can go to trustherd.com. They, if you're ever looking to start a podcast, you're looking for guidance on a podcast, or you're looking to completely hand off the editing and publication of a podcast, Herd Media are the people for you. Go check out Trust Herd, and they can be your absolute guide in a podcast. And they helped me get this set up in the first place as well.
Love it.
With that, thanks a lot for joining us, Gavin.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. It's been a blessing.
Yep, this has been the Carolina Codecast.